This is an example, in my opinion, where the Quran actually corrects the Bible in terms of its stories of the prophets. And I found a story here, and it's one of the prophets that you mentioned by name, Yusuf, or Joseph, as he's called in English. In the Bible, in Genesis chapter 41, the story of Joseph is recounted. It's when he gets out of prison and the Pharaoh has a dream. And then Joseph is summoned to basically interpret the dream. Now, he's called Pharaoh in Genesis chapter 41. When you go to the Quran, the same story is mentioned in chapter 12, which is called Surah Yusuf, or the chapter of Joseph. And I believe it's verse 43, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly chapter 12. And the same story is recounted, but the leader of Egypt is no longer called Pharaoh, he's called king. And that is quite interesting. He's called Melik. Melik is the Arabic word for king. He's not called Pharaoh, which means Pharaoh. It's interesting, with the modern discovery of the ancient Egyptian language, I believe it's called hieroglyphics, which was deciphered by a European, I believe, I'm not sure his name, but he was I'm not sure, an archaeologist, I guess. French, yes, exactly. He was a French archaeologist who deciphered the Rosetta Stone, which basically was a stone that he took, I believe, from Egypt back to Europe and used it to decipher the ancient Egyptian language, which was previously unknown before that. What he discovered was that the leader of Egypt during the time of Joseph was called the king, and he was not called the Pharaoh. And that is because that apparently the leader of the Egyptians during the time of Joseph was actually a foreigner. He was not an indigenous Egyptian. And it turns out the indigenous pharaohs, or leaders of Egypt, were called pharaohs. I think, as far as I understand, that the leader during the time of Joseph was a foreigner who invaded. He was from the Hyksos, which I believe are somewhere else in the Middle East, maybe Syria or Iraq. And therefore, the leaders were known as kings for that reason, because they were foreign rulers. So in this case, the Quran is actually more historically correct, and it's an example of the Quran abrogating the Bible and correcting the Bible in terms of a historical error.